The painting was found in the attic of the Holloway estate, sealed in a rotting crate lined with crumbling velvet. When Jacob Holloway discovered it, he was just 27, an amateur art collector and recent heir to the family mansion nestled deep in the mist-choked woods of Ashbrook Hollow. The painting depicted a shadowed forest clearing beneath a bruised, stormy sky. In the center stood a figure, faceless, pale, and wrapped in what looked like bloodied silk. The figure seemed painted in finer strokes than the rest, so real it almost breathed. Its head turned just enough to suggest it was watching whoever dared to look. No signature, no date. Only a name scrawled on the back in dried red pigment. "Let me out." Jacob brought the painting into the main hall. He had a taste for the macabre, and this, with its dreadful stillness, fascinated him. When he hung it above the fireplace, the temperature of the room dropped. The fire sputtered. The shadows twitched. But Jacob ignored the signs. He invited friends to see it. They joked, calling it the ghoul's portrait. But few laughed twice. Some claimed the figure moved when they weren't looking. One guest swore she heard breathing from behind the canvas. Another never returned after catching her own reflection grinning in the glass, while her lips remained still. Jacob, however, became obsessed. He stopped leaving the mansion. He began researching old family journals, scouring cryptic letters and water-damaged notebooks. He learned the painting had been commissioned centuries ago by his ancestor, Alistair Holloway, a known dabbler in the occult. Alistair vanished without a trace after the painting arrived. His journals ended mid-sentence. "She speaks now, even without her mouth." That's when the dreams began. Jacob dreamed of the figure stepping out of the painting, dragging its silk behind it like a funeral veil. It never touched him. It only stared, inches from his face, its head cocked like a curious animal. He would wake drenched in sweat, his bedroom door ajar, even though he always locked it. On the seventh night, the painting changed. The faceless figure had turned slightly, no longer centered but shifted to the left. And something new had appeared in the clearing, a tree, gnarled and dead, with ropes hanging from its limbs. Beneath it, a smear of red. Jacob knew it hadn't been there before. He had studied every brushstroke. The ropes. They weren't just ropes. They were nooses. The nightmares grew worse. Jacob stopped eating. He spoke aloud to the painting as though it answered. In some ways, it did. When he asked questions, the scene changed subtly. The clouds thickened. The ropes multiplied. Faces began to appear. Screaming faces, eyes wide in a silent howl, pressed beneath the paint's surface like hands against glass. They twisted behind the brushstrokes. They watched him. But the worst came on the 14th night, when Jacob woke to find the fireplace cold and the room pitch black. And the painting was empty. The clearing still stretched beneath the bruised sky. The ropes still swayed on the tree. But the figure was gone. A sound came from the stairs, a slow, dragging scrape like silk and bone on old wood. Jacob fled. He was found days later, wandering barefoot in the forest, muttering about the woman in red. His nails were torn. His eyes, wide and bloodshot, refused to blink. He was institutionalized, never spoke again, only sat in the corner of his padded room, staring at the wall, sketching the same scene over and over, the clearing, the tree, the ropes. But with each drawing, the faceless woman came closer. After Jacob's disappearance, the Holloway mansion was inherited by a distant cousin, Claire. A painter herself, she visited to collect supplies, unaware of the cursed canvas hanging over the cold hearth. She had planned to sell the house, but the painting intrigued her. She noticed the richness of the brushwork, the disturbing emotional pull it seemed to radiate, and, like Jacob, she moved it into her studio. Within a week, she was painting nothing else, just variations of the clearing, the ropes, the faceless woman. One night, unable to sleep, Claire stood before the painting and asked, "Who are you?" The paint on the canvas shimmered, and then, very slowly, the figure began to reappear. Claire screamed. The next day, she covered the painting with a black sheet, but she could still hear it, a soft feminine whisper from behind the fabric, repeating her name, pleading. "I don't belong here. I was trapped. Help me." Curiosity warred with terror. She stayed up, reading Jacob's journals, then Alistair's, pieced together fragments of the past, learned of the ritual, how Alistair had attempted to trap death itself within art, an eternal beauty, a muse that would never fade. But the spell backfired. He had not trapped death. He had invited something in, a soul, or what remained of one, and now it wanted out. Claire told herself she was stronger than Jacob, smarter. She didn't fear shadows or paint, but the whispers grew louder. Then came the night the painting screamed. It was no hallucination. The sound rattled the windows, shook dust from the ceiling beams. Claire ran to the studio and found the canvas bleeding, thick black-red streaks oozing down the frame, pooling at its base. She tore the painting from the wall, set it on fire. The flames flickered, then died. Smoke rose. The woman was still there, closer now, hands pressed against the canvas, face still blurred, faceless, but mouth open in a silent scream. Claire ran, but she didn't leave. Something compelled her to return each day just to look, just to listen. Eventually, she started speaking to it again. The voice changed, became sweeter, more human. It called her sister, promised her visions, inspiration. One night, Claire found herself holding a brush and adding details to the cursed scene. Not with her own paints, but with a jar of something thick and red she didn't remember opening. The painting smiled. Claire vanished. The mansion was shuttered again. The painting remained locked away in a hidden room behind the library, just as it had been before Jacob's time. But something had changed, because now, when the moonlight hit the canvas just right, there were two figures in the clearing, and both were looking out. Years passed. The Holloway estate went up for auction. The buyer was a wealthy collector named Elias Rowe, obsessed with cursed relics and dark history. He prided himself on owning the unspeakable. When he found the hidden room, the painting was waiting. He smiled, ignored the warnings carved into the floor around it, ignored the journals he found beside the broken easel, ignored the old dry blood on the walls. He hung it in his private gallery. Later that night, his security camera caught him standing in front of it for 5 hours straight, not moving, not blinking. When the guards found him, he was smiling, eyes glazed, whispering to the canvas. "She says there's room for one more." The footage ends there, but the gallery is still open, and the painting still hangs there now. Visitors say the number of figures in the clearing keeps increasing. Some swear they see their own face in the paint, and when the lights go out, they hear whispers behind the glass.